Zero. Okay. What is shaking? It is the Golden Mike Live, 3 weeks in a row, episode 1 with your boy, Mark Cordone. I hope you are doing well, everybody. It is a cloudy day here in Florida, and I'm still having a good time. We are here with our guest today, coach, author, and I keep saying it, especially good friend, Sarah Nannen. You are going to talk about life after loss, life after a loss of a loved one, and how we can go into ecstatic growth after that. Now, the thing is, y'all, before we talk about that, I want y'all to know, if you haven't met me, my name is Mark Cordone. I am a positive psychology coach. So if you are feeling good and functioning well, that's what I try to do, y'all. Get you to feel good and function well. So if you're feeling good and you're functioning well today, give me a big old heart. Give me a big old heart if you're feeling good and functioning well, right? If you had one of these weekends where it's like, I'm doing all right, it's Monday, I haven't really gotten used to the shift in time. If you're in North America, give me a thumbs up, right? It's okay to have those thumbs up. And I'm guessing that it is okay to have those thumbs up, right, Sarah? And then if you feel hopeful, no matter where you are, even if you're having the shittiest day, if you're feeling hopeful about the future, give me a big old wow face. Sarah, can you give me a wow face? Love it. So what's shaking over there in Illinois today? How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm recovering from daylight savings time. It's no joke. It's no joke.
It is no joke. So Sarah, we are going to talk about your book, Grief Unveiled, A Widow's Guide to Navigating Your Journey After Loss. And this isn't just for a wife grieving the loss of a husband. I think that this can be something that everybody can relate to, the idea of loss, right? And of course, me being a positive psychology coach, people might think that positive psychology is 24/7 shits and giggles, where I would say that it's probably the antithesis of it. It's about feeling life and feeling life on sometimes life's terms. But Sarah, just to check in with you, what's your story?
So I guess I'll give you the short version of my story.
Okay.
I was 32 with a 6-week-old baby and 3 other kids, 5 and younger, living on a Japan military base when some amazing guys came to our door and told us that my husband's jet had crashed in Nevada. And in that moment, my life changed forever. So packed up my kids, moved back stateside to scrape together my life after loss, and really settled into trying to survive, because that's what everybody was offering to me. They said, your job now is to survive this, stay strong, be patient with yourself. This stuff takes time. And I did that for a while until it didn't feel like enough. I felt like I had been stuffed into this box called widowhood with pretty limiting parameters about what everybody else knew was possible for me, and I had kind of believed for a while. And I said, I don't know if I actually believe in happiness, in loving again, in any sort of meaningful life after loss, but I'm going to spend my whole life trying to find it. And even if I feel a little bit better at the end of my story, it'll have been worth it. So I went looking, and what I found, of course, was that there's a whole hell of a lot of stuff that we can do in reclaiming our journey and really intentional grieving and healing that isn't being offered to us in the institutional grief support modalities. And so I sort of collected up all of these amazing tools and therapies and healers in my knapsack and have put them together in one easy to find place, because I had to travel really far and spend a crap load of money looking for anything that felt like inspiration and empowerment and actual deep vulnerable healing, instead of just like the superficial fluff of like grief support circles and talk therapy, which super helpful, but like didn't actually change my journey. It just sort of kept me like swimming in stasis of Survivor Town.
Sure. So the song by the Indigo Girls is coming up for me right now. I went to the doctor, I went to the mountains, and like sort of you being on this search. Yeah, no, you literally did go to the doctors, and you really did go to the mountains. Um, and before we even talk about you drinking from the fountains and going to all the other places, right? Um, Talk to us a little about what life was like before those great guys came to your door and talked about this jet crash. You had four kids. Like, when did who? What was the name of your husband?
Reed, his name was Reed.
Reed. Reed. So where did you and Reed meet? Reed meet.
We met 14 years before this sad story that I just shared with you, or
Yeah.
the inception of the turning point of mine. We met in college in ROTC. We were both in the Naval ROTC program at the University of Illinois. We were both the movers and shakers back then, and leaders in our circles. And we immediately connected. We immediately bonded. I actually had to steal him from his high school sweetheart. So that was, yeah,
Oh.
I know, homewrecker from the start.
But I guess Sarah kind of knew what she wanted
I
back
knew what
then.
I wanted, and I knew what he
Okay.
wanted too, so we made it work.
Okay. Right on. Right on. So
So we were together for a long journey. We were, together all 4 years of college. We both were military officers going different ways, so we had a lot of years of long distance living and loving, and got married while we lived on opposite coasts. So we had quite a
Oh,
journey
really?
already, and then
Okay.
once we finally kept our stuff in the same house and had the same address, we started having babies.
Sure. Sure.
So soon after our first child was born, I got out of the military and became the military spouse.
Yeah.
So a lot of my role was, carrying the home world for our family and raising
Yeah.
our kids and, making stability as we moved around the world while he went on deployments and did his super intense, amazing training. And we really created this life. And one of my roles, one of my hats in that world was really being his head cheerleader, which I loved doing.
Sure. Sure.
So
Now, this, not to go too much into it, but like this day that I'm sure it was a day like every other day, and then folks came to your door. So you're having a reaction. How old are your kids now? You had a small one.
then, yeah,
Yeah.
they were 5, almost 4, 2, and 6 weeks old. They were little. And I remember the day like yesterday, man. It's crazy how viscerally I can remember it.
Is there anything you'd like to share about the day, or would you be willing to share anything about the
Yeah,
day? Yeah.
it was funny because it was one of those days where I woke up and I was like, I've got this. I've got this mother of 4 thing. He's going to be home in 2 weeks. I'm nailing this. I got everyone dressed. We walked to the park. It was like a feel good day. Like, I'm killing the mom game today. My almost 4-year-old crossed the monkey bars for the first time that morning. I took a
Oh, that's a
video of
big
it.
deal. This is a big deal.
I mean, I can remember it. Like, I can taste it. It's crazy. We went home. I weeded the garden while they played a little bit. I think I put the baby down for an actual nap and made a real lunch. I was like green smoothies. It was like the mom of the year day. And somebody knocked on our door, and it was kind of bizarre that it was a Sunday in Japan that somebody had come to our door. So I thought it was my neighbor bringing us cakes because she was like a cake lady. And I'm like, oh, Joanna's here with another cake.
Oh, Joanne and her cake.
So I sent Peter, the 5-year-old, our oldest, and I was like, can you go get the front door for mom? And he opens the door, and I hear a man say, hey, son, is your mom home? And my heart kind of went down into my belly, and I was like, that's weird. That doesn't belong there. Mm-hmm. Something... But I wasn't thinking, I was thinking like, oh, maybe somebody like hit our car in the parking lot, or there's construction everywhere on base. So maybe like we need to evacuate because the construction's gone awry, or like these were my initial thoughts. Like,
yeah,
normal. Yeah, sure. We'll just roll with it. And I came around the corner from making lunch with my kids sitting at the table, and I saw them standing there in their military uniforms. Like you see in the movies, they're in their finest dress. Like, also, that doesn't belong. And as soon as I saw it, I knew. And I couldn't say anything. I just started shaking my head just like this. I didn't want them to say anything. I didn't want to ask anything. I didn't want it to be any more real than it already was. But I knew what was happening. I knew what they were there to tell me, that something really bad had happened. Mm-hmm. We walked into the back room, and he probably said something very official, like there's been an accident. And he asked me, is there anyone we should call? And what I said was, call my husband Reed, because I need to tell him what happened and I'm not sure what to do right now. Like, that was the first thing I said. Like, no one else existed. Who should you call? I don't know. Call Reed.
Mm-hmm.
So eventually I figured out that I had a dear friend next door who made me cakes named Joanna that they should call, and they got
Oh,
her over
Joanne
there.
and her cakes.
And I mean, she's really the hero of the story,
Yeah.
in so many ways. But from there, I just sort of like disassociated completely. I felt like I was watching all this happen from the corner of the room. It was a really out of body experience. But at some point, the oldest son says, "Mom, why are you crying? And why are all these people here?" And it was like, oh, reality check. I have
Yeah.
to like
Yep.
be a mom right now. So we had a conversation, and I've always been this way with him, but I knew in that moment the most important thing for me to be was extremely real with him. So I just said, they're here because there was an accident. Daddy's plane crashed somewhere in the mountains, and people are trying to find him. Like, trying to keep my life together and my face together from like sobbing and crying. And he just looks at me very matter-of-factly, scientific 5-year-old style, and was like, don't worry, Mom. I'm sure they're using helicopters, and the helicopters have lights on them. They'll find him.
Okay.
And it's like, you just like can't help but hug him and hold him in that moment. Be like, oh, the
Sure.
way that our kids can see the world and the way that we like see all of the impending doom it's
Sure.
amazing. So anyway.
Sure. Now, talking about impending doom, did you ever, even in 1 second before this day, in Japan on a Sunday, when your little one goes and crosses the monkey bars, that you would ever feel someone come to the door and knock on it? Or like, did you ever fear that would happen? Because it sounds like Reed flew jets. There's an inherent risk in
Yeah.
that.
Oh,
Like, did
yeah.
you ever? Okay, you have imagined
That is unfortunately, a really real part of being a military spouse
that.
and being
Okay.
in the military in general, is that we are exposed to the reality of that life and death kind of job every single day. So,
Okay.
we all take it for granted when we say goodbye to our people in the morning and they drive their car to work. Like, it's a normal day, but how many people get in car accidents every day?
Yeah.
Well, we think about it all the time because the reality of their job, like, war is inherently dangerous, and the training for the war is inherently dangerous. Now, I will say that I was very afraid every time he went off on deployment, but I came to the point where I took it for granted that he flew F-18s every day. That was just his work. You sort of like put that fear in the suitcase in the far back of your brain closet. Like, I know it's there, but like, I can't actually function if I look at it. So I couldn't ever watch. There's a movie I think called A Few Good Men where like it's a super real scene where the guy comes to her door. I couldn't watch those movies where they really depicted that worst case scenario moment. But all of us military spouses have that suitcase that we carry around with us of like, will he come home from deployment? But he was on training, so
Okay.
in my mind it was like, no brainer. He's in Nevada. Like, he's at camp.
Sure.
Like, it's
Sure. Right.
So it did shock me because I wasn't prepared. I
Absolutely.
had not prepared myself for that,
Okay.
because he wasn't deployed.
So what about preparation? Because whether you be someone who is married to someone who inherently is taking risks, right? Or whether you're caretaking someone who is beginning to phase out, there are preparations that you sometimes make, right? Now,
Mm-hmm.
with this was a sudden loss, but also with the risk, was this something that you and Reed had sat down and talked about? Like, if something happens, this is what I want you to do, or like, did you ever have that conversation?
I tried because I was the one at home, like holding down the fort, and I
Mm,
inherently he was more at risk, but he was like many of us are. I'm the cowboy who's untouchable. Like, you've got to be untouchable to be able to fly jets. You've got to be untouchable to go be a police officer every day. Like, there's some jobs where you just have to like hold on to your
sure,
18-year-old
sure,
untouchableness and
yeah,
like not actually look that fear in the face. So he was really pretty uninterested in having that conversation. We took care of the basic things, life insurance and that kind of stuff.
sure,
But before his previous deployment, before the accident, I was pregnant with our third kid. He wasn't going to be there for the birth. And I made him and he would agree to this. I made him read bedtime stories and recorded it with the iPad so that if something bad happened to him while he was gone, the kids could have videos of their dad reading bedtime stories. I don't know why that was the thing that I was like, you've just got to do this for my peace of mind. And I'm so glad I did, actually, because after this accident happened, I had all these videos, and my then boyfriend and I actually years later put them together into this really beautiful video. And yeah, he's reading Dr. Seuss, but it's cool to have that, like, his voice, and to like see the ridiculous twinkle in his eye. And while he's being very sweet to the camera, I can also see the loathing of the fact that I'm making him do this.
So awesome.
It's so awesome. So yeah, I mean, I think, you're talking about preparation and like, what do you do with this? I think the way you prepare for this is you live every single day, and you pay attention, and you take the pictures, and you make the memories. We take it for granted. And I can look back now and say, like, I freaking took so much of my life for granted. I was busy with the garbage of the day, and I missed moments and opportunities of like deep, powerful connection with him because I was too worried about, sending the right email or cooking the right dinner or cleaning the freaking bathroom. Like, I missed stuff because I was too busy worrying about the BS that doesn't actually count. So while I don't, I don't encourage anybody to prepare for the worst.
Yeah.
The thing that happens is so interesting when somebody gets a terminal diagnosis is people start living like they're dying, right? I've got all these women in my coaching program who are like, as soon as we found out that he had brain cancer, we just like traveled for 3 months straight, and we went all the places, and we ate all the food, and we had such an amazing time, and we spent all of our time together. And I was like, imagine if we just lived that way all the time. Like, what if we paid attention and we constantly committed ourselves to making space for magic and making those memories and paying the freak attention instead of worrying about stupid stuff? So that's how you prepare. You live your life.
So let me ask you this. This definitely sounds like a lesson learned. You're coming out of this with, being able to, really talk about living life, and why wait for a terminal diagnosis? If there were things that you could go back and do or go back and say, would you go back and hit a switch and go back?
That's an awesome question. I wrote a blog post 2 years ago on his birthday, and it was a letter I wrote to him. And I said, what I would tell you if I could take you out for dinner tonight on your birthday. And it was an interesting thing. And a lot of it was, talking about what the kids were doing and who they've become and how tickled he would be with the way they are. But one of the most important things that I said that really woke something up in me was, I learned how to love myself so that you didn't have to do it for me. And I mean, that's one of the things that I really teach my widow sisters, because obviously I'm a widow too. I teach them this concept of radical self-love and radical self-care. And, self-love is this buzzword that's like everywhere, and everyone's like, cool, but like, what the hell does that actually mean?
Yeah.
That sounds super nice. Tell me what to do. I don't know what that means, because we don't live in a world that really teaches that or honors that. And so it's amazing to, bring women face to face with themselves and see their magnificence for the first time and claim that and exude that, and come to understand their own brilliance. And I think in hindsight, if I could do anything, I wish I could go back and love him the way I know how to love now.
Wow. Okay. This may be a first in the Golden Mike. I'm finding myself at a loss right now. But I am thinking about the idea of, not to go too far down this rabbit hole, but what is radical self-love in just a few words?
I think radical self-love to me is this concept of fully seeing and embracing yourself. And that, that sounds fluffy. But the idea of, I talk to people about noticing what they notice,
Yeah.
about what they want, about what they feel, about what they need, about what they wish for and long for, the stuff that they wish they were doing instead of the stuff they're actually doing. And so I think noticing what you notice is actually one of the biggest components of radical self-love. The second part of that sentence is, and not judging it, or don't make it mean anything. So notice what you notice and then like embrace it, let it be fully there, and do something with it instead of pushing it away, which is what we're really trained to do in our culture. Is I feel something, I judge it, and I push it away because I don't want
Yep.
to be that person. I shouldn't be that person. I shouldn't want that thing. I shouldn't need that thing. I shouldn't say that thing. I shouldn't think that thing. And radical self-love is making space for the reality of you and all of your humanness and all of your mess and majesty, and saying like, man, there I am, and here's what I need, and here's what I want, and here's what I choose, instead of living life from shoulds and fears and guilt and shame and garbage.
Okay, understood. So I'm going to have to interject with a reason why I texted you last week, right? And
Let's talk about it.
I think it had to do with radical self-love. I do want to get I want to go from the story of the day, that Sunday and how you moved forward, because we're hearing hints of it, what happened
Yeah.
afterwards. And I definitely want to go into that some more. But I also, I have no problem saying that I text you on, it was like Friday, and I was like, hey, my uncle is really sick and I'm here in New York. You know, I, and I'm not quite sure how to move forward right now, because should I, I saw him, it, I'm not sure if things are okay. I said this strange, like, stay here and I'll come back after New York. It'll just be a couple days, pull through, and he was slipping, and I didn't know whether or not to stay in New York. I didn't know whether feeling good and functioning well meant me stopping at that. Like, I didn't know, and I needed to talk to you, Sarah.
Yeah.
You know? And so I'm still at a loss for whether or not that was the right thing, and I'm still at a loss now that he's gone. During the training, I found out after the first hour of training, which was a 3-day training, and needed to figure out whether to continue to move through it. And you were there, Sarah. And so
I
I
think
don't even know what to
those
say
moments are important,
right
right?
now.
Because it's like
Yeah.
that's a face when you come face to face with like guilt and shame,
Yeah.
and like what's my truth, and not making either of those things mean anything. Like there's guilt and shame here about like, should I have done, what should I have done? And I anytime you say the word should, I'm like, just pause and treat that like it's a 4-letter word. Like if you hear should coming out of your face, that's a red light indicator that like you're going down the wrong path.
Did I just say should a lot?
So back it up, right?
So
Yeah.
how many times
I don't know if I
should
should go, or I should stay, or I don't know if I should be there, if I should be like, yeah, man. That's something that like we're super programmed to think that there's a right answer that's like outside of us.
I didn't even hear myself there. Yeah.
When we hear that, it's like, okay, pause. What's actually happening here, right?
Sure.
I feel super guilty because I'm not there. I feel a little bit ashamed that I'm here having this amazing life-changing experience at this, like this is a huge culminating event in my life while my uncle's dying and all these people are like taking care of him and worrying about that. And here I am. Like there is so much of those like normal human emotions of guilt, shame, fear stuff that always show up. And when we practice this, mindfulness and meditation, I know there's like super scary words out there, but like what
the
we're
stuff
really
you learned
doing,
in the mountains,
we're paying attention, right? That's all it is. We're paying the freak attention to what we're thinking and what we're feeling. And part of that is noticing what you notice. So you notice there, like I felt guilty and I felt ashamed and I felt like maybe I was doing something that was going to make me sick and make me afraid and, screw me up indefinitely by not going home to like say goodbye one more time.
Yeah.
But on the other side of it, you're like, I'm here and this is amazing. And like, this is something I've worked really hard for. And I'm capable of like being my amazing self and holding space for these people and this passion that I'm here on this earth to do.
Yeah.
And you chose that.
Yeah.
that's radical self-love, right? That's knowing that like in this moment, and that's what I asked you. I said, what do you know right now? And you told me. You told me that what you knew. So it wasn't about what
I
you
don't
didn't know.
remember what I told you.
I said, you tell me right now about what you think, what you know. And what you said was, I mean, I'm here and it's amazing and I'm totally present and totally in flow.
Yeah,
And
I was.
and I said, yeah, man, then stay. Like it sounds like you know, like you don't need to go home because you're there. If you weren't capable of all those things, and your inner self, that intuition would be like, get on the plane, dog, and go home.
So if
Like,
I so if I would have also said something along the lines of I know that I can't fully function, that would have been a different choice I needed to make.
or like I'm not. Like I'm behind the stage, like bawling and freaking out, and like I'm saying crap, and I don't even know what I'm saying. Like
That's usually me anyways. Anyone who's watched the Golden Mike, but
yeah.
yeah, but yeah, I think after having that conversation with you, I went out at lunch. I walked around the block. It was one of those like ugly cries. I think people thought I had just like lost my job or something.
Mm-hmm.
I walked back out, and it was good. It was good. And then when I came back, that was a whole other, yeah, it was a whole other thing when it
Then
came
you
out.
let
Yeah.
all of like that stuff, this
Hmm.
stuff, like that's important, right? It's
Yeah.
not a sign of human weakness and dysfunction. Grief is not pathology. You're not sick. It is
Mm.
an invaluable, right? It's an invaluable expression of your soul. And it is part of, Marianne Williamson calls it your psychic immune system at work, which I totally believe in. If we keep that stuff bottled up inside, it stays there.
Okay.
And there's this Mayan shaman named Martin Prechtel who's super brilliant, and I listened to his like talk at my parents' kitchen table like a month after my husband died. And what he said was, it woke me the freak up, because I was committed to being strong, and to me that meant like getting my crap together,
Yeah.
right? And not crying and not being the sad lady and like not being, the dysfunctional widow who can't leave her house and can barely feed her kids and like should do her hair. So what he said was, you guys in the Western world, like, you've got it all messed up. He's like, when we grieve as in our culture, like we all go out in the streets and we all wail, and like the widow's at the center of it all, but like we're all right around with her and we're all like letting
Yeah.
it hang out. He's like, if you don't have like ripped jeans and mud on your face and like hair out of place when you're done like grieving, like you did something wrong. And I kind of love that. He's like, we just like, we let it all come out
Yeah.
and it moves through. And that's the thing I think that we're really missing in our culture, is that we don't have anything to do with grief. We think a funeral is what we do with grief, which is
Yeah.
really just like, it's for everybody else.
Yes.
Everybody comes and does their grief for 10 minutes and then they go home and go on with their life. And then it's like, now my grief starts.
Yep.
And so what do we do with that? And so a lot of the work that I do in my programs is, I call it intentional grieving. Like, we need something to do with it other than just feel it. And how do we make grief tangible? How do we make it expressed in ways other than just, crying, which crying is a huge important healing part of our journey. But what else can we do with all these feels that can become overwhelming and take over not just our hearts, but our thought processes? And I think this is the moment of like shifting into ecstatic growth, is like when we can interrupt that pattern and transition from the victim of grieving, where grieving happens to you, and instead we shift into this active grief, which is like, we're driving the show, we're running the grief 100%, and it's a manifestation of our healing on the outside of us.
Mm. Okay. Okay. So let's talk about this a little bit. Like, so you're obviously being able to help folks like me right now, like on a Facebook Live. I obviously from these comments today, Leanna, Kim, Johnny, there's a lot of folks who are appreciative of what you have to say. And yet we haven't gone to your journey from going from grief to ecstatic growth. Can you talk about a few moments? Like, well, I guess the first thing I wanted to throw out there, was there a point where you were that non-functioning human for a while? And
Yes and no.
Okay, yeah.
I had to like I had to schedule time for it, which sounds weird, but like literally they came to my house. There are 4 kids at the lunch table, right? And 6 days later I got on an airplane and relocated internationally with my 4 kids. So like there was an eternal to-do list in my life that like did not, I mean, I guess if I had like become bedridden and like nonverbal, people would have like taken care of stuff around me, but like I didn't know how to do that, and I was so well equipped at overriding all of my personal needs to make stuff happen, which I talked about earlier. Like that was my superpower. I thought I can do anything. I can carry all of it. I know that I'll show up for me, and I had trained myself to just count on myself. So I just like went into action, and since then I've identified like that out of body experience that I have was really like my essential self stepping back to send in what I call the curator, who's this she's like a French museum curator or something, and she's like she's the perfect one. Like send her in. She knows what to do. Right?
Right.
She's the one with poise and grace. She's the one who can like be strong and exude calm and ease even in the midst of this storm of her dead husband and 4 kids. And
Mm.
so I really disassociated. And, you know, for that first year, she was the one running the show. And like what was left behind was my 5-year-old self who just really wanted space to be sad and for someone to hold me.
Sure. So I've heard disassociation twice here.
Mm-hmm.
The first one in terms of when, and in 2 different ways I'm hearing it. The first one was when the folks came to your door,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like an out of body experience
Totally.
for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
The second one I'm hearing was almost as a pure coping and functioning mechanism now in the first couple years or
Yeah.
the months afterward.
Totally.
So as you are kind of going in and those parts of your 14 fucking years, man, like, as you're going in and grieving internally, there's another dissociation where it allows you to show up
Yep.
and still take care of your shit.
Which is great.
Yeah.
And terrible,
And that's
right?
the curator. That's the
Right.
curator.
Which is
Right.
terrible too, because then like you never actually get around to feeling, because once there was a little more downtime where like I could be allowed to like there's enough time in the day for me to feel sad
Mm-hmm.
or to like stare out the window.
Mm-hmm.
It was too late, I thought then. Like now everybody knows that I'm this strong, amazing, inspiring widow, and if I like backslide into the lady who can't stop crying, then they know I've cracked. They know I got it wrong. They know it was all a game, and like I'm ruined. So like I
So there
wasn't.
was some like shamness to you. Like there was some phoniness to that about being able to feel vulnerable.
I think that I
Yeah.
was really committed to like I can't, like it's not even safe because I'm not willing to be that person. I'm not willing to become that person. I'm not willing for everybody to see me as that person because I had already faced so much projection and pity and sympathy. Like people already couldn't see me because I had the W on my forehead. It's like when you get cancer and they're like, oh God, how's the chemo? Can you taste your food? What's the
Mm.
diagnosis? How's the treatment? Like, are you losing your, like, no one sees you anymore. They talk about your cancer. And the same thing happens in widowhood. It's never like, how's your day going? It's like,
Wow. So
how are you? And you're like, I'm good. And they're like, no, but how are
how really are
you?
you?
How are you?
How
Because I
really?
know you're really, really bad. So like, just lay it on me. You know, like people
Sure.
can't see you. So I wasn't willing to let that be a part of my public self. My best
Yeah.
friends and a few of my really close people, you know, they knew more of my heart's landscape, but I really didn't even know it until I explored it. I think I had so completely disassociated my whole life really from that part of me that I didn't know
Yeah.
how to be her. So it
So
wasn't like a game. It
I
just was.
I am curious that um it, like the scarlet letter of the W on your forehead that you were talking about seems like it became a part of your external identity right away.
Oh, for sure.
And 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 that's where I hear you saying that people could
Mm-hmm.
have put you in a box and be like, "No,
Mm-hmm.
how are you really feeling?"
Right.
You know?
We like when you ask someone about let me ask you, when you think of, well, not me, like a widow, like the old lady widow, like what do you think of? Tell me. What do you know about widows?
Oh, seriously, you're gonna ask me to
Yeah.
stereotype. Okay, so
Do it.
yeah,
Don't
um,
even filter it. Just go all in.
like
I do this with
Uh,
my widows, by the way, and they all have their own answers too. So you're not going to hurt anybody's feelings.
yeah. So I'm thinking of like old school, like black, kind of stays in the house, never really gets on with their life, maybe keeps their rosary around their thing, and really is constantly delivering flowers to the grave.
Uh-huh.
Um, uh, I could see it, it's almost like part of them stereotypically, like it's I could see someone like losing an arm, but like you know what I mean? Like it's
They're
okay.
incomplete.
So like, I would see it as a handicap
Yeah,
if you made me,
totally. I
if
just did. Thank you.
yeah, you did.
Yeah.
So
She's
yeah,
probably also poor, probably a little bit crazy. She probably lives on the edge of town. She might be eating children secretly. Like this is real. You know, we've got this archetype. It's not even a stereotype. It's an archetype that's captured in a lot of our stories, right? It's in our
yeah, that's like
movies.
very fairy
It's
tale, like
it's it's real. And so
fucking
even
Disney.
though I was,
Yeah.
32 when
Mm.
I got the W, like suddenly that
Mm.
archetype was really projected onto me, and people were like, "Oh God, she's so young to be so ruined already." Like
Ooh. Ooh. Yeah.
they
So
just no one could see anything for me other than what I call survivor town, which is like literally one of my friends from college was like, "Okay, he was one of my best friends. He was like in our wedding. He's
mhm.
like, just promise me one thing. Just promise me you won't get fat. Please don't become that widow." And I was like, okay. And I knew he was saying it from a place of love, and like he
Sure.
was, bringing the levity that he was really good at
Sure.
into the conversation. But in my heart of hearts, I was like, oh my God, that's what people think is going to happen. Is that what's going to happen to me? And
Well,
part
let
of
me.
the reason I moved home back to where I was from with, my parents and my in-laws and like helping hands around was like, I was expecting at some point that I would be completely incapacitated by my grief. And I
Yeah.
wasn't sure that I wouldn't become one of those grieving, dysfunctional people who like drown my kids in the bathtub. Like I thought that
Sure.
was like at some point that will happen to me and I'll need medication and like intervention from the institutions. That was part of my widow mythology was like, this is how it is.
Now, in terms, I want to explore that just for one mini segment here. In terms of before this happened to you on that day,
Mm-hmm.
what were your archetypes of widowhood? Because I'm interested on you got the brand, but also
Yeah.
what was your internal dialogue?
So this is the cool thing.
Yeah,
Usually all the stuff that haunts you when you're living it is really just a projection of all of your own judgments onto yourself. Right? So all the stuff that I was worried about other people thinking and saying about me and saying like 99% of them they never said out loud to me. If they were thinking them, like I'm sure they were. I know real life is like that's real. But I would constantly be lamenting and worrying about like, should I take my wedding ring off? Like, is it too soon or is it not too soon? Because if I take it off too soon, they'll think I'm like a hussy and I didn't actually love him and I'm like out trying to like get a new baby daddy. But if I leave it on too long, then I'm like the pathetic girl who like needs to get on with it already and move on with her life. Like every single choice that I made every day, all day long, like how many pictures do I put in my house of him? Because if there's too many,
oh
then
my
it's a
God.
creepy,
Yeah.
weird, like dead guy museum. But if there's
Right.
not any, then like I'm shaming his honor and my kids won't even know the memory of their amazing, like everything felt like I lost. So I was holding myself to this unattainable
Wow.
standard of getting my widowhood right.
Yeah.
And my best friend Susan finally called me out and she's like, "What if you just did the thing that like that you most needed and felt most right for you?" And I was like, "Huh. I hear what you're saying. That's an interesting concept. Does not compute." But like in that moment when she finally said it, I was like, "Oh, I should make like maybe I just do what's right for me." That's brilliant. And that was really one of the moments that changed my journey was I finally took ownership of like my own humanness and what we were talking about before, which is like, what do I actually want? What do I actually need? What feels important? And like, don't push it away. Claim that and choose that. That's radical self-love. That was the first time where I really understood how to actionably love myself and honor what I needed. And the other part of it that I loved was she followed it up with, and always reserve the right to change your mind if something else feels more true down the road.
Ooh, wow. And how did you feel about that one?
Loved it, because it
Yeah.
gave me like, it was like, well, maybe I'm irrational because he's only been dead for 7 months. So like, what if I'm making because that was part of my judgment about widows, was like, we're irrational and we don't know what we're doing and we shouldn't be trusted, So it felt good to be able to say like, oh, I changed my mind.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is actually that discussion that I hear you having with her is where it seems like you moved from the looking for the identity of the actions of the widow, the archetypical widow, and
Yeah.
living in the sweet spot of being a victim,
Mm-hmm.
right? So like when at one point do I take this off?
Right.
At what point do I put 3 or 4 pictures of Reed up right
Mm-hmm.
now? And should they be 8x10s or postcard size?
Right.
You know?
How big is
And,
big enough?
yeah, and it sounds like this conversation to move towards ownership was the beginning of an ecstatic growth. Would that be too much to assume?
No, I
Or
think that's
okay,
totally spot on. I went from, trying to desperately to get my widowhood right so that I
okay.
would be lovable and worthy and safe. And I
Hmm.
shifted into this spot of like, what my life experience is more important than my lovableness and my safeness. And I also kind of realized that everybody around me was looking at me with this like, treating me sort of like a mixture between being a 12-year-old and like a midlife crisis, you
Hmm.
know?
Yep.
And so it gave me a little bit of permission to be completely radical with my decisions.
Yeah.
Like I went and got a tattoo and I was like, everybody's like, oh God, she's grieving. She got a tattoo. She got 2 tattoos. Oh
And you had
God,
your
she
tattoos before
shaved
that?
the side of her head. This is clearly her grief talking. And there was a little bit of freedom in that to just be like, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing, but like this feels really good. And it's cool that I guess I finally claimed my humanness and be like, you know what? I'm totally messed up just like the rest of you people. Like I don't have to pretend to be perfect anymore. And it gave me like this freedom to just like explore. I bought this leather like biker jacket. I'm like, I'm not someone who wears a biker jacket, but I don't know. I just like, I feel really good in it. So it's on sale. I'll just like keep it in my closet and have it. But like, I wear it all the time now. And everyone's like, that's an awesome jacket. You look amazing. I'm like, I know. Because I finally found my way to like myself and
Okay.
my expression and my style instead of trying to be like the good
Yeah. So
girl.
so so this ownership, Sarah. What were some of the things that you were seeing in terms of differences? You're talking about some of the internal changes that were
Mm-hmm.
happening. What were some of the external things that you were beginning to either feel, experience? What were your friends telling you when you were taking this ownership?
So part of that friendship conversation is an important thing to explore because that
Mm,
changes when you're going through this like massive life transition
hmm.
involving the loss of your other half, so to speak.
Mm,
And I had to kind of hold space to let go a little
hmm.
bit
Hmm.
because a lot of my motivation was like trying to be good so that I could like stay part of those circles and part of those tribes and part of those friendships, especially the military with it's such a family.
Hmm.
And I felt like a lot of what I needed to choose sort of like dishonored the family almost.
Yeah.
Like I was
Oh.
I was really supposed to spend my life committed to honoring him and his memory. Like that's what a good military wife does when he died. Like he's an American hero and like my job was to like honor him and keep his memory alive forever. And like of course I want to, but also like I would like to honor my own life too. So
Absolutely.
in choosing that, I felt like I almost had to like dishonor the family a little bit,
Uh-huh.
and create some space. And they're an incredible part of my story, and I deeply appreciate them. But part of what I teach, my widows in the program is, finding your tribe. And your tribe is not the people who you have to do or be anything special to be able to be a part of it. Your tribe is the people who see you and love you and show up with you in it all. So if you're crying one minute and the next minute you need to dance, they're right there with you crying and dancing. And there's no judgment and no one's worried about like, what does this mean? And what is she doing? They're just in it with you and they're
Yeah.
willing to show up and see you in it. And so my friends, you know, in that journey, it was these two amazing sisters who I'm not related to, but like I feel like we are, because they just were like my rocks, and they saw me through it, and whatever I threw at them, they're like, all right, let's roll with that. I see you, man. I totally get it. That's amazing. Tell me more. They wanted to see my true journey instead of like asking me about my cancer.
Sure.
And that made all the difference. So they were all for it. Everybody else around me was a little like, okay,
Sure.
that's, or
Yeah.
like, that's cute. Like, that's a cute thing to do, honey. That's
Ooh.
good for you.
Oh.
Um,
Well, one of the things that I'm hearing that is, it seems to be a universal theme, and there is obviously a loss that happened here, but with the loss of Reed was also this certain part of Sarah that left. And I'm hearing the story of a birth of a new Sarah.
yeah.
And with the birth of the new Sarah, and with the birth of anybody who is a coach or starting a new job, or or moving forward after any kind of loss or new birth for themselves, there always seems to be this, I don't know if it's the heroine's journey or the hero's journey, but how do I stand up as an individual and stand out without having to apologize to the collective?
Mm-hmm.
And there seemed to be this part of you that was like, okay, there's this collective here. I know what the mindset is of this collective.
And they
And I
were
also
really
know,
important to me, and they kept me really
yes,
safe. Yeah.
yes. And
Mm-hmm.
how do I how do I continue to move and grow as this sort of Sarah 2.0 post
Mm-hmm.
ecstatic growth Sarah without having to apologize to this
Yeah.
group,
Yeah.
you know? And what I'm hearing is that there were two people here that were like, yeah, we get it. Go shave it,
Mm-hmm.
tat it. We're here. We have
Right.
no ego in the process, and whatever you need, we create that space for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's
Yeah,
complicated because people know you from the story that was, and they
absolutely.
don't know the
Yep.
you that you're becoming, and it's hard for them to like to do their grief alongside your growth. And I think that's where a lot of the
Absolutely.
disconnect comes from, is that when they, you know, when they encounter their grief aside your growth, it's confusing and it's conflicting, and it's like, well, I'm still here and I'm still hurting, but she's over here and she's growing, like, and that's where you come to that, like, the
Yeah.
fear and claiming that reality that, like, some people will say, you know, she must not have loved him that much, or man, she's sure is healing really fast. And
Okay.
I just had to kind of like own that and be like, that's theirs, that's cool. Like, I know
Okay.
what my journey's been. I know what my profound love story with Reed is and was and will be. Um,
Hmm.
and I bring that into the next chapter of my life. So,
So talk to me, Goose. What did the next chapter, or what is the next chapter of your life looking like, either right now,
man,
or what did it look like afterwards?
sure. It was like an excavation for sure.
Ooh.
So
Okay.
a lot of what I found had always been there, like deeply, deeply buried underneath all the stuff that I became because I was supposed to.
Hmm.
So that's been a really powerful thing to realize, is that what I'm actually doing as a coach now for these widows is helping them come home to themselves for the first time, which is exactly the journey that I took. So we take on all these hats. You know, we start out as kids and we're told what's allowed, what's safe, what's lovable. And a lot of that looks like don't need anything, don't want anything, don't have a lot to say, right? Like, don't be dramatic. As women particularly, it's like, don't have these emotions, just like be cute and show up and like be pleasant. And
Hmm.
then that turns into like be someone's wife and then become someone's mother and like maybe have a job if you feel like it. And we gather up all of these pieces of an identity that we're creating for ourselves.
Hmm.
And so when you ask any woman whether she's a widow or not, like, who are you? She will without a doubt tell you who she loves and what she does.
Hmm.
Probably most men too. Like, who I'm married to Joe and I've got 3 kids and I work at the veterinarian office, like whatever it is. That's who I am to people. And so I had this story of all the hats that I had worn about throughout my story. And, you know, I was listening to this podcast on, it was Invisibilia, and they were talking about stories and loss. And they said something that just like grabbed my attention. It's like, we all have stories. Like, you have the story of Mark. I have the story of Sarah. She has the story of Angie. And like, we think we're the characters in our stories. And
Okay.
so When something like this happens, some devastating thing, so your husband dies, you lose your leg, you lose that firm, you go totally flat broke, like you've got your rock bottom thing that happens, a huge chunk of your story gets removed.
Yeah.
And a lot of us try really hard, like we have a choice in that moment, right? It's unstable. So we have the choice is either to like spend the rest of our lives like attempting to stabilize that story of who we were,
Mm-hmm.
or we have the choice to step into a new story. And the difference is when we realize that we're the author instead of the main character. So I figured out that I was actually co-creating my life. I figured out that I had choice in everything that I did. And I didn't figure it out on my own. I figured it out with a ton of healers and my coach and my other coach and the third coach that I hired for different things, right? I went to the people who had been there who could help me figure it out because I knew I had blind spots. And once I figured that out, every time I faced a new demon, I was like, I need an expert to help me figure out the name of this demon so I can move through it, move past it, and take up the pen once more of co-creating my life. So that's really what changed the game ultimately. There was some intentional grieving. There was some going to the mountains and, doing my work by myself and sitting still, creating stillness to even feel and think and process. But what ultimately happened was that I figured out I was the author. And I figured out that magic was happening all around me. I started noticing what I noticed, not just about how I felt, but the magic around me. Practicing gratitude, noticing the way the wind felt on my face, noticing the way that the signs that I would see from my husband, like there's pink flamingos in the yard of our new house. Of course there's pink flamingos. Hi, Reed. Like I would have those moments of just like, there's just such a communion now with the synchronicity of the way things are. And I just am constantly in awe of the way that the universe is supporting this journey for all of us, really. And so part of what I do is I help these women like look up and let that light like catch your eye and like look around you, because there was a day when I felt like I was standing up from the rubble of my life for the first time, looking around and be like, oh, all of this is here. I didn't even know all of this was here. And like, climbed out of that. Like, let me look around and see what I'm working with here.
That is pretty amazing. And one of the things that I'm hearing, not only in your idea of choice, your idea of not only being a character who experiences the ups, downs, and all arounds of the story, but you are writing the story. And I think one of the cool things that I'm picking up on is not only did you may have lost Reed in that one day when people came to your house in Japan, but when you're seeing Reed in flamingos, that's a kind of reintegration of Reed back into your life.
Absolutely.
And bringing him back in.
Yeah.
So
that's a fun thing that you get to do though in this work as intentional grieving is like you actually can cultivate a powerful connection with the people who are no longer here physically on the earth with you. So moving forward in your journey doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean abandoning. Like he is always my first love story. And I get to bring that with me into the rest of my life and even into my second love story, which is a whole nother conversation that I've had to have with like, I know there's 3 of us in this relationship now. And it's like,
really,
it's an amazing thing that like the cultural collective has even agreed upon like what it means to love again. What's the second best kind of like, it's a pretty good love story. And we all know that you love your husband first and most. And so it's a fascinating thing, not only to resolve it in myself and say like, what does that actually look like for me? But then to explain it to other people. So I often use the conversation of kids. I have 4 of them. So just process that for a minute. But when I was pregnant with our second kid, I was like, oh, this poor baby. Like, I mean, I'll take care of her. I'm sure I'll make her breakfast. She's going to have cute hair. We'll make brownies. But like, I don't think I'm going to be able to love her as much as our first baby. Like, I love him so much.
Yeah.
And then I like, then she was born. And I held her in my arms. And I was like, oh my God, I love her so much. Like, I love them both so much. And then that I had a third baby and I love him so much. And then I had a 4th baby and I was like, my mind is blown by how much I love you so much. And so like we live in a world where love is so like limited and there's so much lack. And like my one soulmate, we have all these like fairy tales and garbage stories around like what's possible in love. And then I do a whole bunch of work around my heart, and I meet this amazing man who I love so powerfully. And he's not my late husband. He's my fiance now. And it's amazing to see there's not a comparison between the two,
That was the first
right?
question. Yep.
But really, I can see how I'm different in this love story. And like
Interesting.
what I said to you earlier about I learned how to love myself so that he didn't have to love me
Yeah.
for me. I think now that I've stepped into myself and claimed responsibility for my story and claimed responsibility for loving myself first, I get to be with my Brad in a completely different love story because of who I have become. And so this love is different, but it's only because I'm so powerfully different and I live my life differently and I see my life differently and I need different things from him that I didn't necessarily know how to need in that first story. And I'm more open to receiving, and I've found my voice and I can ask for things that I didn't know how to ask for before. So it's different because of who I've become and not because it's my second love story.
Sure.
And I explained to him the other day that it's not like there's three of us in this relationship.
Okay.
It's I said when Reed died, he shows up in a lot of ways in my physical life, but he's
Yeah.
he's become love. He's become the light. He's become those moments of gratitude. So I see him in the sunset. I hear his ridiculously inappropriate jokes in my head, like he's talking to me. He's the flamingos in the yard and the perfect timing. And like, he's in my third kid so scarily, profoundly. And so like he's all
Yeah.
around. It's not like he's this embodied person who I'm in love with anymore. He's just become love, and I feel him in the wind. Just like so he's really become more of this like expression that I can connect with to the universe in like in a personified way. So it's
Okay.
like the wind has a name and it's Reed instead of it being this person that I love.
Now let me
Let's
ask
go
you.
deep.
Yeah, well, I wanted to ask you about this. I mean, do you ever need to talk to Brad about like, yo, Brad, like, is it truly a triumvirate of the three of you, or is it like Brad gives you space for Reed? Because I'm trying to wrap around this, and there might be some folks trying to wrap around this.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm not trying, Brad. If you're watching, bro, I'm just trying to get your
He'll
side of
totally
things.
watch this because he's amazing.
Brad, what's up, Brad? Give us a heart. Give us a heart for Brad, everybody. But like how is this in the triumvirate? Like how is this? Because you're seeing Reed everywhere. Is there ever a time where Brad is like, "Talk to me, Goose. Like, what's going on?"
Yeah.
Like,
There was
yeah.
actually the day we
Okay.
got engaged, we had this really big conversation about it because as
Huh.
we were walking up to our hotel in Cancun, it was like a song that I played at his funeral came on, which was "Happy." Like that's not a funeral song, but that's how I do funerals. So this song comes on, and I played like all of the happiest memories of his life, and like I wanted it to be a reflection of his life, not his death, and so that's why that song was there. But
Yeah.
so that song's playing as we walk by, and I just kind of like smile. I'm like, "Hi, Reed," and he was like, he got kind of quiet, and I was like, "We got to talk about this." And so that was where he, said like, "I know there's three of us in this relationship, and I'm trying to figure it out." And
Gotcha.
I was like, "There's actually not,
Okay.
right? There's two of us in this relationship, and he is now, like I said, he's sort of become the wind. He's sort of become the sun, the sunset." And I'm trying to put this like into words that make sense to anyone other than me, but he's not personified anymore. He's become love. He's become part of that universal force that's outside of us. I think it's just that I'm tuned in enough that I can hear it in his voice
Sure.
instead of like the goddess or
Yeah.
Saint Michael or who, like people, have their guides and their angels all around. And I think he's just really become one of them. And
Okay.
when I have those moments, it's not like an, "Oh my God, I love you" moment. It's really like "I've got your back, keep going." So
Sure.
everything that I like pick up from him in the form of love or signs or like moments of indication, it's more like the universe has your back. Like
Gotcha.
this flamingo in the yard in this perfect house at this perfect timing, like, "Yeah, girl, this is yours. Take it." And so it's really more like I take it as a universal sign from my guides in the voice of Reed saying like,
Okay.
we've got you. You're on the right path. Keep going. Life is amazing. Life is abundant. Like, we've got it covered. Just keep showing up.
So let me ask you this. You recently got engaged. Congratulations to you and
Thank
Brad
you.
and the four.
Thanks.
Freaking awesome. You have a book out. You're coaching a bunch of folks on this. You've been to the mountains. You've been to the shaman and you've been to the doctor, right? You've done the whole Indigo Girls song. We've talked about growth. Are there ever and you're able to say there's a depersonification of this person that was known as Reed that I just can see in just my external environment now. Is there ever a day where the repersonification happens and you're like, oh, I miss the fuck out of you, and you just cry?
You know, he comes to see me in my dreams a lot. And so I've had a couple of dreams where, like, he never looks like him, but I know it's him.
Okay.
But I think it happens in those dreams where I'm just like, oh, it feels really good to be right here beside you. Like, It feels good to, like, see you.
Yeah.
I think most of my grief, if I'm incredibly honest, is for my kids.
Yeah.
Because I have those 14 years of memory and, like, visceral, tangible, like, I can jump back in time and be like, that was awesome. So I tell people a lot that my grief now feels like deep, powerful, nostalgic gratitude for what has been. So it doesn't come through me as pain. I mean, I've done a lot of work.
Yeah.
It doesn't come through as pain anymore. It's really an expression of, like, powerful gratitude. It's kind of like when you remember that, like, I don't know if you have a story like this, but, like, that perfect morning when you're at your grandma's house and it smells like fresh baked cookies and, like, the sun's just right. And, like, you're just having this, like, moment of, like, my life was freaking awesome. Like, I feel so loved and so safe. My grief sort of comes through as these, like, really powerful, beautiful, nostalgic, like, that was amazing. Like, I'm so lucky that I got to have that with him. But the sadness comes from my kids.
Sure.
You know, the like 6 months after he died, I went to my first wedding and there was a father-daughter dance. And I was like, my daughters are never going to have a father-daughter dance. And then I had, like, this reemergence of, like, insane gratitude when Brad enters the picture and I see them bonding in such powerful ways. I'm like, my daughters are going to have a father-daughter dance. You know, so my grief mostly has been for them. I mean, our fourth baby never met him. The only picture she has with him is brand new, naked, like, straight out of my body. And like, somebody's holding the iPhone with, like, the FaceTime picture of his, like, gorgeous, like, he's just, like, beaming from across the ocean. Like, that's the only picture she has with him. So for her, I'm like, she doesn't even have, like, pictures of memories that I can tell her about. You know, she has to, like, remember other people's memories when I tell the other kids about their stories. So that's really where my grief shows up.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I love about the way that you're talking about grief is I'm putting back to this term that you used earlier on, intentional grieving. In positive psychology, there's a term called remembered wellness. And it sounds very similar. And we think about a time where we felt most safe, even if a person isn't around. Or a lot of times people will say they were sitting on a beach and they just felt like everything was coming together. And it does seem as if, like, part of intentional grieving is the remembered wellness piece. It's not only the, man, I'm sad right now, but the, man, that was good times. And I can always revisit that if I just think about that.
Absolutely. One of the first things I have my ladies do is, like, tell your story, not your widow story, but, like, your unfiltered from the very beginning love story all the way through, like, the end of it. Right? Tell your story and claim your story and name your story and own that story and know that no matter what comes next, that is always part of your story.
So let's do this right now. Know your story, right? Let's say that was the first thing that you could tell all of us in terms of ecstatic growth.
Yeah.
What would be the next steps that we could go into in terms of knowing, or telling and knowing your story? What would you have for us with that?
Totally. Well, so part of it we already kind of touched on earlier.
Yeah.
Not only is it telling your story, but, like, part of the reason we do that is to, like, proclaim our reality. because it's easy to tell the love story, but when we get to the part of the story that feels hard to say out loud, it's like, I'm saying out loud that I have a dead husband. Like, it's a hard thing to claim. So the story isn't just, I met him when we were in college and we had an amazing 14 years together and we went all over the world and we had 4 babies and like it was magic and I could pick him out of a room of uniformed men like that, like we had this like woo crazy sparkle. But I also have to claim the part of my story that is, and he died. And what happened next? And who did I have to become? And who did I choose to become? And who did I get to become as a result of it? And so the story isn't just like the good part, just kind of like when we talk about like celebrate your wins. It's also like you gotta claim it all. It's all yours.
Yep.
And then honoring that, like the piece that like you're actually the author. So can you write that same story from like the third person perspective, telling your story as though it was somebody else? Because that lets you get this bigger perspective on what's actually happening and stepping out of some of those like cycles of thought where you get like pulled down into like the depths of despair and you can't see your way out. And so
Sure.
shifting your perspective changes a lot. So you can, like I said earlier, you can double down on living the story of what was, or you can actually like dive into like what will be. Like, this is the story I'm committed to living now. What will be? I have no idea what it looks like, but I'm going to keep showing up and I'm going to keep taking one step after the next. And I'm going to keep walking through the open doors that are presented to me and like seeing what's there. And
Right
then the
on.
noticing what you notice piece, that other thing we talked about, that notice what you notice about what you feel, what you need, what you say, what you're, like every thought that comes through, like actually let it register and honor it instead of pushing it away or judging it or making it mean something.
Awesome.
And then really the last piece is the gratitude. Like start practicing gratitude. And the women in my program every day show up and share some form of gratitude. And a lot of them are like, I don't have anything to be happy about.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, well, how does it feel in the morning when you're sitting at the table holding your favorite cup of coffee with the sun on your face? And they're like, oh, I love that. I'm like, gratitude. Like, why does it have to be like, I went to a trip to France and I stood under the Eiffel Tower and I was blown? Like, it is such, gratitude needs, it's so simple, like
Right.
putting on your favorite shirt and the way that it makes you feel, like that is gratitude. It's not just the big stuff. It's like noticing all the little tiny moments of magic in your day where you're like, yes,
Yep.
even if it's like that little. Like
Yep.
all the kids are asleep at the same time. Gratitude.
Gratitude.
Like nailed it. I took a shower today. Gratitude.
Gratitude.
So really like learning how to celebrate and even notice those things. Like there was a bird outside of my window for like 15 minutes. It was so like gratitude. Notice it. We don't even notice it. We're missing that stuff.
Let's do one more gratitude bomb. Pink flamingos on my lawn.
Yeah.
Gratitude.
What's your gratitude bomb for your day today? You've already had one, I'm sure.
Mine?
Yeah.
Well, wow. Gratitude bomb for my day today. Wow. I think definitely having this conversation because I was feeling the heaviness still going into this one. But I think outside of this conversation, I had some pretty amazing reconnections with clients after taking off a few days. And I'm still able to get back and create space. And I know that is a hardcore part of my existence. You know this shit, Sarah.
Yeah.
Like, I'm all about that feeling good and functioning well. I cry about it behind the scenes. I scream about it when we're in those writing meetings together. But some way, shape, or form, that gets me back on track. And also at the same time, like being able to really celebrate Tito Percy's life and know that, he went with not a lot of pain and just having fun. But then if I feel like crying, I'll cry right now.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. And I think that's an important thing, especially for, I know you have a lot of coaches following your page. And so I think that's a big thing for us as leaders and way showers and healers and coaches is like, we've got to make space for our own stuff because we spend so much time holding space for other people's stuff. And really like, unless we're willing to look at our own hearts and look at our own vulnerability and look at our own truths, like
Yeah.
we'll never actually be a powerfully effective coach or way shower, because we've got to continually do the work on ourselves and our hearts to be able to show up for our people.
Yeah, now just to see, now you're going to give me doing gratitude bombs right now. I do have to say this. The support network that has shown up behind the scenes through thick and thin is something that I have to recognize. And I know a few of them are watching right now, and you're one of them, Sarah. And so that is something that I have a lot of gratitude for. And I may
Same.
not be able to thank all of them, but if any of them are watching, you know who you are. So I think that's a gratitude bomb that I just want to drop.
For sure. That's
Boom.
huge. And I
Right?
think, a lot of people are like, oh, you're so lucky. You had all these amazing people. I'm like, you know what? The truth is, like, I spent a lot of years paying attention to those amazing people and creating this really powerful tribe. And so, like, if they had a rock bottom moment, like, I was there.
Mm,
And now I have my rock bottom moment and they show up. And so it's not this like accidental thing that like amazing people showed up around me, because I think when you pay attention to the people in your life and you invest in those relationships and you create those connections. We talked way earlier about like, how do you prepare for something like this? And one of my answers was live your life, but pay attention to the people around you. There are amazing people all around you. Your tribe is all around you, man. And like, those are the people who are going to carry you through this stuff. So
it is. They are. They are. Lisa Avery, I would like to give you props for the longest post in the history of posts. You covered both of our faces, but thank you so much for giving Sarah those props there. Now, Sarah, we could we could go on for a long time talking
like
about
days,
this.
I think.
We could go on days.
Yeah.
But I want people to know how to get in touch with you. What can we do right now to if they're feeling this, we know somebody, we want to connect with you. What's the best way to do that?
Sure. Well, I'm getting ready to launch a new podcast called Grief Unveiled, Real Talk and Real Truths about Grief and Widowhood, which obviously you can see I'm stoked to talk about.
Yeah,
That's coming out Memorial Day. So if you'd want to follow my Facebook page, it's Sarah Nannen, Grief Unveiled. I've got a website that's griefunveiled.com. You can find my book on my website. You can find my book on Amazon. I'm
there you
all over
go.
the interweb. So if you want to find me, just tell Mark you want to find me and he can connect you with me. But I love connecting to people. And whether you're supporting someone who's grieving or you're actually grieving yourself, there is
Hmm.
some really big, important work that's happening. I have a Facebook group of people called the Empathy Tribe that's learning how to love their widows in their lives and not say the dumb things, but actually like show up with people and be amazing. So hit me up if you want to be on the inside of that scoop. There's all kinds of stuff happening. So
Gotcha. So I'm gonna put this in the show notes. So y'all, I have a feeling that if you want to replay some of this stuff, this is some good stuff that we can always be revisiting. But I'm gonna put this in the show notes, how to get in touch with you. Sarah, I don't know if you've seen, but this is the reason why the show's called the Golden Mic now. So we're gonna go there. Uh, you've said quite enough right now, and I hope to bring you back again. And so on behalf of all of us, I want to thank you. But I want you to imagine, if you will, a golden mic dropping from the ceiling now, right? And that golden mic will translate into every language across the world for 2 minutes. And I'm going to hit the switch, and I want you to grab that mic and I want you to run with it. And you are going to say, here we go. And you're live.
anything is possible. It doesn't matter how flat on your face on rock bottom you find yourself. Anything is possible. It's a journey. It's a journey that you can't make it alone. You got to reach out and grab your support people, and you've got to pay attention to what you think, what you know, what you believe in. And at some point your eye is going to catch the light, and you want to just keep putting one foot in front of the other and walking toward that light, because the truth is every single day of your life, whether you're face down on rock bottom or you're standing on the mountaintop, is like, this is your story. It's being written every single day. And every single day you get to choose, even when it doesn't feel like you have the choice. You decide to pull yourself up, to make yourself that cup of tea, to take your time, to take care of you, to love yourself hard, to ask for the help around you, and to keep moving forward, because this journey that you're on is amazing. You're amazing, and you're worth living the life of your dreams.
Oh my goodness. Sarah Nannen, you've said it all. You've told your story. Um, uh, Reed, thank you so much. Tita Percy, we love you. To the people who are in our lives right now, we love you. And to the people we have yet to meet, we love you and we look forward to meeting you. Sarah, oh, this was awesome. Thank you for taking the time. Sarah Nannen, everybody, we're gonna be back tomorrow. We're gonna get back at it, the golden mic. Look for us. But right now, like her, love her, want some more of her. Sarah Nannen, everybody. Take care. We'll see you tomorrow.
Bye, you guys. Thank you.